Hello and welcome to Merlin's Manor. Today I'm going to be giving my thoughts on Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice, a game published by Triton Noir. This is a campaign game that is based on the video game series Assassin's Creed, which is a game that focuses on a combination of stealth and combat, often with an emphasis on stealth if you want to be successful in the missions. Does this game give off the same feel as the video game but in board game format? Is this game a satisfying campaign game? Well, stick around and I'm going to give my thoughts on this game as a longtime fan of the Assassin's Creed video game series. Now let's go ahead and start off the game review by talking about the art and components. The game comes with some nice miniatures to represent your assassins. Some basic standees going to be for the rest, but these miniatures are nice enough. It's not too bad that the rest are standard cardboard standees because it'd be expensive to have all the enemies you face as miniatures or even as acrylic standees. There are a bunch of specialized dice that you're going to have in this game, and the game comes also with some sturdy tiles to set up various situations on the map, just to show you a few of them. And the artwork on the tiles is great, draws you into the game. You've got some rooftops as well. The game also comes with some cards that have alternate outfit styles for your assassins, which I found to be necessary as it was nothing more than an aesthetic difference, and a basic one at that. There is a super deluxe edition that comes with an actual 3D tower. I did not get that edition, nor do I find having a tower necessary, and it probably would have wound up being nothing more than a gimmick that would get in the way of seeing things more than actually being useful to draw you into the game. Although I must confess, it would be cool to place your assassin on top of an actual tower when you climb the tower. Now overall, the components are nothing too special, but the artwork is good and draws you into the game, and as I said, you have some nice miniatures and some custom dice. Now let's get into the ease of play. On the one hand, the game eases you into things a bit by adding rules as you go rather than front-loading everything. On the other hand, I found some of the rules overly complex at first, and also quite a few things that were never fully explained by the rulebook, which left us having to make assumptions based on what was not being said sometimes as well. There were also some things that were not so intuitive, and so when coming back after a little while of not playing, they were hard to remember how they worked. Now, I would not say this game is really hard to learn, but it's not easy either. I would place it somewhere in the middle of the road overall. Now let's talk about the gameplay itself, the meat of the review. When looking for a board game that gives the feel of Assassin's Creed, this one did not disappoint. The system rewards you for being stealthy and punishes you for getting discovered too early in a mission. While most missions will at some point break down into a brawl eventually, you want to put that off as long as possible. The game has a test system where you're going to roll a number of these red dice for each enemy that's in the square that you enter. So if there's two, you'd roll a couple of those. And if you get this eye symbol there, then you are discovered. If the alert is in the green and you roll this one, then you won't be discovered yet, but you would if it had been in the red alert. And you have some items that will help you mitigate this as well. And there are several ways to become incognito again once you've been discovered. You can go into hiding places, you can climb the tower, you can throw a smoke bomb down, and even a way to turn the alert state back to green after the alarm is sounded. Though often once the alarm sounds, you're going to be stuck in the red for the rest of the game. Most melee weapons and some ranged weapons will also cause you to become exposed just for using them, while you can take out enemies silently with your hidden blade, just like in Assassin's Creed. You can also search and hide bodies, and if you leave bodies in the open, they will possibly be found and sound the alarm. Searching bodies can also lead you to being caught, so you have to be careful about searching when there are nearby enemies, or just take the risk. Now, why do you not want the alert state to be red? Because you spawn a lot more enemies in during the red alert state. And if you ever run out of standees to spawn enemies in, then the game is lost. Also, if everybody loses all their health, the game is lost. So stealth is often the name of the game. And I really like that this game rewards you for stealth and also provides a risk with every encounter that you will get caught. You also typically know which way the enemies will be going. Each round is the first thing you do. Each round is flip over an event card, which has something that will happen, and then tells you which direction they will travel at the end of the round. Now, some cards cause you to pick a direction at random at the end instead, so you won't know. Now, on your turn, you have 3 action cubes, which you are going to spend, and you can hold over 1 action cube till the next round. This adds an extra layer of strategy where you can hold off on an action to have a 4th action next round, as well as having a reactionary action in case someone comes into your space during the enemy turn. Now, the combat system works really well, as you are going to be rolling dice based on your weapon, and then you either get hits, misses, or this assassin symbol right here, which is going to trigger a special ability on your weapon as well as counting as a hit. You can also do a coordinated attack with your fellow assassins where you can spend a cube and fight at the same time. This can be helpful to take people out fully so you do not have to suffer a retaliation for those who do not eliminate if your roll misses. This especially becomes useful as you encounter tougher enemies as the game progresses. After your turn is over, the enemies move as indicated on the event card unless you are exposed in a nearby square, in which case they're going to move towards your square and attack your square if ranged. They will also move to a nearby square where you recently became incognito as you leave the marker there that you would have had on you before as saying you are exposed. Basically, they heard something and they're going to go investigate it instead of just continuing with their patrol. Now, my wife and I just really enjoyed this system. It works really well, and it really does feel like playing Assassin's Creed in many respects. I also enjoyed the character options for the game. You had a couple that were more focused on stealth, and my wife's character was really good with combat. I was happy to have chosen one of the stealthy characters because I really enjoyed that aspect of the game. Now, we chose to run the game with 1 character each, but we did sub in and try the extra characters on their special character-related missions. Each character gets better main abilities as they level up, and there is an option to choose an extra level up ability that is a one-time use per mission ability that is specific for your character and relates to his or her playstyle. Unlocking this ability was fun, and though sometimes the execution of some of the abilities was more situational and did not get used every game, it was fun to use them in just the right moment to pull off something good. Now, a few nitpicks that I have with the game are, first of all, that you have only 5 inventory slots outside of your weapons, and quickly one of those gets filled up with a cape that you're going to want to keep on forever. And my character actually had another permanent item, and so this left me with basically 3 inventory slots for items, which led to not caring much about searching and even questioning what I would bring in each game and what I would leave behind for other reasons. If at least the cape was not considered a backpack item, then that would have been helpful in my mind. Another thing we noticed in playing was that the game was rather hard at first without the upgraded equipment and abilities, but then quickly got fairly easy, and then towards the end of the game, we were just steamrolling through the game with overpowered characters, with overpowered weapons, and so it became very easy. The amount the enemies leveled up and scenario difficulties increased just did not keep up at all with how we leveled up. The game was still fun, but not the challenge it started out as. You also only have 2 attempts to win each level, and the second attempt must be done with your trainee assassin, who was a much weaker version and made things super difficult on your second try if you did fail the first time round. Most games make things a little easier if you lose, or just vary known information and keep things the same difficulty level, but this one does get harder if you lose a scenario and have to replay it, although we did wind up winning our second attempts each time. The one was barely winnable, though, with these weak trainees. I also personally found the between missions stuff a bit clunky, a bit fiddly, and overall not necessary. I left most of the between missions headquarters stuff for my wife to figure out because I didn't really want to deal with the fiddliness of it. Overall, the gameplay on this game is great with just a few nitpicks, and the biggest complaint is that it starts out maybe a little too hard for a beginning of the game, and then it should have become eventually, and it becomes eventually so easy. It'd be better if it started out easier and ramped up a little bit more. Now let's talk about replayability. I don't see us replaying the campaign unless we decide that we want to play again as different characters, which very much I could see us doing if we didn't have just so many other games we want to play. The game does also encourage you to play through a second time with an added difficulty level. Also, there is a 100% synchronization system in the game that is very similar to the video game where you have to accomplish certain things each mission or you don't get 100%. And so you may want to go back and replay the game if you failed to get that 100% sync throughout the game. We actually missed one mission's 100% sync early on one of the early missions. And technically you are supposed to play through again to get the full 100% synchronization. There are also a few expansions out there which could add replayability, but those expansions are pretty expensive for expansions, so it's almost like buying a full game again. So that's something to think about as to whether it's really adding replayability or could be considered an entirely new purchase at that point. I am personally satisfied with one playthrough and may one day play it a second time or get some of the expansion content to add in, but this is not a game that I find to be highly replayable. But considering a single playthrough of a campaign lasts 25 to 26 games, if you complete all the side missions, not counting losses of course, this is a decent amount of gameplay even if you do not replay it. And you could probably sell it on for a decent amount of money so that you can feel like you got your money's worth even without replaying the campaign at that point. Now let's talk about the theme. The theme is well implemented from many of the items being the very kind of items you get in the video games, and facing enemies that feel like enemies from the video game, and a system that relies on stealth to keep things from getting wildly out of control too quickly, and then finally a combat system that works well to feel as similar as board game combat can probably feel to a video game. The theme comes across well in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice. Even the synchronization system feels like the video game, both trying to achieve 100% sync, and how each map has that tower to climb where you're going to want to climb up that tower to synchronize with it and discover some more secrets in that map. The storyline also felt like an Assassin's Creed storyline. The theme is fulfilled well in this game. Now let's get into my final thoughts. I really enjoyed my playthrough of this campaign game. It does feel like Assassin's Creed in board game form, with the emphasis on stealth and how things ramp up once the alert state turns red. I'm going to give this game an 8 out of 10. I almost lean into an 8.5, but just something that holds me back from that is how the difficulty seems to free fall somewhere around the middle of the game. Felt like a few of the early missions were harder than they should be for introductory missions. Then the game hits that sweet spot for a while, and then once our characters become OP, and my wife in particular could go into a space full of enemies, and I'd ask her, hey, do you want me to go ahead and coordinate with you? And she'd be like, no, I think I got this, hold off. And then she'd just destroy them. Even bosses towards the end became too easy, although they were interesting, some of the bosses, and what you had to do in order to face them. Now, the early bosses were much more on par with our abilities and provided a much better fight than the late game bosses. Another thing that held me back in the overall rating is the ambiguity over some points in the rulebook, plus the lack of intuitiveness with some of the rules. But the theme does come out really well in this game, and the game is fun, and it is replayable if you want to play with other characters, which will provide a different gameplay feel, or if you want to take on the harder game challenge, which I feel might make early games too hard when you are underpowered, and then might hit that sweet spot mid-game and might even stay at that sweet spot or close to it in the later game. Eventually, we might have to try out the harder version of this campaign just to see how it feels. At any rate, I do feel like I can recommend this game if you enjoy Assassin's Creed, or if this gameplay style of a combination of stealth and combat is something you feel like you would enjoy. As always, I hope you got something from this review to help you decide if this here is a game for you that you would enjoy or not. And I encourage you to check out these other videos that I have and subscribe to make sure that you're seeing more of my content. Have a great week, and game on.